First of all, I want to start off with just dedicating this talk to you. There's a lot of people here that I know now that I didn't know 15 years ago. I want to thank all of you here for the blessing that you've been in my life. When I moved here, I hadn't been here since college. I remember being here the first few times and I didn't know a soul. And it's so wonderful that that's changed. And thank you for sharing yourselves, whether it's the fall festival, the funeral committee, the choir, the pastoral council, faith formation, staff members, non-staff members. This is a wonderful home, and I appreciate your making me feel welcome and accepting me here. So thank you. So, a little bit about myself. For those of you who don't know me, I was born in Iowa, 1960. So yes, I have a big birthday coming up next year. I grew up in Carroll, Iowa, the second most Catholic county behind Dubuque, for those of you who didn't know. I was born into a family of 12 children. So I was still at home with the 12 apostles, all right, 12 siblings, 9 boys, 3 girls. I was the 7th child, and kind of the focus of what I feel called to talk about today is the gifts. Much like you've been a gift for me, it's kind of a funny coincidence. Tonight I went to reconciliation with Father Cedar in the back, and as my penance he told me to think of 3 things that I'm thankful for. I didn't have the heart to tell him that I have a list of about 8 here that I was going to talk about already. So 3 was nothing. So probably the easiest penance I've had in a while. So besides the gifts of a Catholic family, I had a wonderful gift of 2 faith-filled parents, 4 faith-filled grandparents, numerous cousins. I think my mom told me last year she has over 100 first cousins. I have 50. So obviously I came up all Trump, I guess, when it comes to family. It made me being who I am a lot easier than probably it was for some of you. Some of you are probably converts. I have a great respect for you, for the road that you've come to be here. I'm sure it wasn't easy, and I'm sure there were lots of people along the way that helped you, much like helped me. A big part of my family life growing up with 12 siblings was a ramshackle dairy farm that my dad bought when I was 8 years old. I liked it probably the first week or 2. And then the dairy cows showed up. So I started to feel a little bit like an indentured servant. You think your mom makes you do chores at home. Let me tell you, every day, rain or shine, snow or sunshine, you're milking cows every morning. And I wasn't really a morning person back then. So a wake-up call came at 5 a.m. I wasn't the most obedient son. But little did I know what a gift that would be to me. My father had to make ends meet. And obviously a farm is a good way to put milk and bread on the table. He probably didn't love pulling me out of bed by the toe, looking in the closet to find where I'd hid, or some of my brothers who just ran away when it got to be about that time, went over to the neighbors, whatever good excuse we could find. Another gift that comes to mind was the gift of a good education. Many of you sacrificed to support the school across the street. It is a wonderful thing that you're doing. I benefited from that. In Carroll, where they built Kemper High School, it was non-tuition. It was free. My parents never paid a dime other than supporting our church because the church was assessed for the parish. An amazing gift that I think if you think about who came before you and laid the groundwork, who built this church, who educated you, they did it for you. It's our turn to do it for those that come. So I take great joy in seeing Danny's children's, Kelsey's new family, the new families that are yet to come. When I look out and I see young couples here, like me, that don't have children, but yet we're all part of this body. We're all God's children in a way. We're all brothers and sisters. So thank you for that gift. The last gift I want to mention is the gift of encouragement. I probably wouldn't be, not probably, I know I wouldn't be here without the encouragement of a nun who probably didn't know the impact that she would have. One of the gifts that I was given that I didn't mention was the ability to sing. I loved music. I loved singing at church. But when I came to learning how to read a note, it's all kind of Greek to me. I can tell that they go up and down, and I can't tell you what they are. But much like a bird that can maybe mimic something, if I hear something long enough, if I go to church every week, the words become familiar, and I enjoy them. Well, one day at school mass, Sister Jean said, "Mark, you have a wonderful voice. You should be in the song group." And I was like, I don't think so. I can't read music. I didn't admit that to her. So I decided I would fake it. I joined the music group, and the rest, I guess, is history. I learned to love it. And in doing that, in singing these words, whether it was Amazing Grace or How Great Thou Art, God's Word got planted deeper in my soul. And even though, as a teenager, you think you know everything and you go off to college and you do different things, that was planted deeply enough in my soul that every Sunday I needed to go to God's house. I wouldn't say that I always remembered that it was the real presence that I received, but I showed up every Sunday. My parents drug us to church, much like they drug us to the dairy farm to milk the cows. You see, the farm that we lived on, it was so ramshackle, the house on it wasn't inhabitable. So we still lived in town, but we went 3 miles out to milk the cows every morning, and 3 miles back in, and every night. And so that gift of encouragement, Sister Jean, helped solidify the example that my parents and the community of the church that I grew up in modeled for me every day and supported me going to their school and listening to God's Word. So as I went off to school and tried to figure out what I was going to do with my life, God was always there. And He helped me to keep my values and to find a good woman. My wife Sharon, who I wish was here tonight. But if you know Sharon, and if you know me, we're Panther fans. Tonight's the first basketball game. So I told her she could go. There would be a recording. She could listen to it later. So I found a good woman, and we got married. and I found a good job. Thanks for the confidence that I have in singing from Sister Jean, I actually became a salesman and went out and started talking to people. A shy little boy with a soft-spoken voice. Learned how to use his voice in prayer and adoration and thanks to God by being at Mass on Sunday and being part of a song group. It brought wonderful people into my life, wonderful friends. My mom always said she didn't need to worry about me because she looked at my friends and knew their family. And that I wasn't going to get in trouble if I hung around with people like that. People much like you, the people I look at out here in this church. So, as a young married man, actually before I got married, the company that hired me sent me to Los Angeles. Talk about going off a long way. I'm so amazed and in awe that my parents would let me go there. I can't think if I had children. One of them told me, "Mom, I'm going to Los Angeles all by myself." She must have had great faith to let her son take a leap like that, confident that she had raised me with the tool and the faith that I would need to sustain me in those challenges. Thankfully, 6 months later, they brought me back to the Midwest, where I later proposed to Sharon and we got married and moved to Minneapolis. During marriage preparation, we had to meet with the priest. I'll never forget Father Pfeiffer. He said, "So, have you talked about children?" And right away Sharon said, "Well, I'm not going to keep up with his mother." Still a great line. But it kind of leads me to one of my hurdles. You see, I really pictured us with children, but that blessing never came. And that was kind of the beginning of a struggle for me. So before I proceed telling you about getting through that hurdle, since I am a cantor and I love music, I love song. But another wonderful person in this parish shared with us in choir. And just so happens, about a month ago, as we started practice for another season of choir, what showed up in my folder was a song called Hymn of Promise. I'm trying to think how this talk is going to go and communicate what the gift of song means to me. And the song lands in my lap. And I'll dedicate this to the children in our crowd tonight. This first verse. And I'll see if I can sing it for you. In the bulb there is a flower, in the seed an apple tree, in cocoons a hidden promise, butterflies will soon be free. In the cold and snow of winter, there's a spring that waits to be unrevealed until its season, something God alone can see. That song speaks to me because of the promise of the gifts that God gives us. We don't know what they are when they're young. We don't know what the world's going to be like. We hear all scary types of things, whether it's school shootings or God knows what, that make us nervous and wonder how are we ever going to survive. But at some point, we have to get pushed out of the nest and find our own way. And we run into challenges And hidden in those challenges is our opportunities. So as I struggle to figure out where Sharon and I fit in this world without children, temptation comes, doubt comes. You fear growing apart, resenting each other, communicating with each other, frustration with each other. At about this time, a friend invited me on a retreat. Dave Sheppers was a great guy. We played softball and volleyball with him. And he said, "Mark, I think you're the type of guy that would appreciate this." And I'd never been on a retreat before. And I remember sitting out in the pew the first night. It was a small retreat center in Minnesota, Drummondville, Minnesota. I think it's still there. If you want to go on a wonderful retreat, I can put you in touch with some people. But the priest gave a wonderful interpretation of the prodigal son. And it hit home to me because I didn't tell you, one of my 12 brothers was a bully. And I'll say I hated Pat. I didn't like him. Honest, I didn't like him. There were 12 of us. I guess Judas was one of the 12. My brother Pat. That's kind of the way I saw him. It's just like, I hate to admit, if I had a gun a couple times, I probably would have shot him. And that's terrible. That's a terrible thing to say. But on that Friday evening in the retreat, the Father told us the story of the prodigal son, and he had us close our eyes and imagine ourselves in the story. And the Father, for those of you who don't know it, I'm sure everybody does, the one son asks for his inheritance, and he goes off and he blows his inheritance, and he ends up destitute. The economy turns sour, a drought happens, and people are starving. And he's on the brink of starvation, and I think God spoke to him and said, "Go back to your father." And so the son decides to go back to the father and ask to be a slave, to be a servant, and to stay with the pigs, not realizing how much love God has for us. And God's loved his son so much that before he even gets there, he sees his son coming and recognizes him and runs out to him, because he who was lost has come back. He'd given him up for dead, and he is full of joy. I always saw myself, especially that night, as kind of the son who stayed home. See, I'd been a pretty on-the-track Catholic, went to church even when I went to college, stayed in the church, married in the church. And I kind of resented my brother. How could I not forgive him if God had that much love for his son? So it was a changing point in my life. I wish I could say I had it all figured out right there and then. I still struggled for a while. But a few years later, when we moved to Indianapolis, we weren't meeting a whole lot of people, and I was kind of observing that when you move around, because this is now my third city, I've been in Los Angeles, I've been in Minneapolis. Oh, I left out. We went to Phoenix for a year too. And we moved to Indianapolis, and I'm having trouble fitting in. I look around the church like I did 15 years ago here, and I don't know anyone. And the choir director, my first Mary Sitta, I'll call her, Betsy Glowinski, put a note in the bulletin inviting people to come sing in the choir. I hadn't sung in the choir since high school. And I thought, well, Mark, you're going to make this work. You need to find some friends. Who better than some people that sing? So I showed up to sing, and it probably wasn't a couple months. And I don't know, I guess in my thinking we didn't have a lot of talent in that choir, but in hindsight, I think Betsy had a good ear. She said, you should be a cantor. And I said, no. And Mary had a little bit of salesman in her. She didn't take no for an answer. And then she recruited some help. Mike Wright was the accompanist. My first Marcia was a man. And Mike had a wonderful Italian wife. And he said, Mark, you can do this. Come over for breakfast on Saturday, and we'll just try it a couple times. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I was very gullible. I was pretty sure it wasn't going to work. So I called his bluff and I went over. Well, after 3 or 4 Saturdays, he wasn't giving up. And so I cantered. And much like a little bit tonight, hopefully not noticeably, my knees shook the first time I sung a psalm at Mass. She kind of weaned me into it very carefully, kind of like pushing a child out of the nest. And gradually, I think the first Mass I cantered at, she stood with me. That's how frightened I was. How little confidence I had in the gift that God gave me. Now I'm a little bit ashamed that it took so much pushing to get me out there. Especially because it brings me so much joy to share it in ways I never imagined and could not see. So again, I point to the young children here. You have no idea what life holds. And I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to be around to see it, like we all did last night when Rachel came. 5 or 6 years ago, she was a pretty shy girl. It was amazing to see her and the witness she gave us. So I think it's time for the middle part of my song. I'll try to get this over a little quicker. I'm rambling tonight. There's a song in every silence, seeking word and melody. There's a dawn in every darkness, bringing hope to you and me. From the past will come the future, what it holds a mystery, unrevealed until its season, something God alone can see. So I think back to the first few years of cantering. My strength and my confidence grew. My success at work grew in ways I wouldn't have imagined. And the opportunity to share my faith with others grew. At St. Jude in Indianapolis, there was a chirp retreat. If you've ever been a part of a chirp retreat, or if you ever are in the future, I would say go, run. It's a wonderful experience. And I met a young family, Stan and Charlotte. And little did I know, about 6 months later, they would lose their son, Robbie. And Stan asked me to sing at his son's funeral. And if it hadn't been for the invitation and encouragement of Betsy and Sister Jean, I never would have been in a position to celebrate the life of their 10-year-old son. few years later when my dad died, I never would have been able to cantor at his funeral mass. Or this spring at my mother-in-law's funeral. So I really appreciate the opportunity to sing every Sunday here at St. Patrick's. And I have to say, you have wonderful voices, and thank you for singing along with me. Because it's so meaningful, I think, when we can put our prayer to song. I think it stays with us longer. It seeps into our souls. Much like those catchy jingles in some of those commercials that those songwriters come up with over the years. Another gift, I guess, to be thankful, to go on with the theme, was the gift of adoration. I think it's 11 years now, Father, that we've been doing adoration at Columbus. How many years is it? 11 years. My father was a big adoration guy. I could never understand it. And the fact that this parish and you were part of bringing adoration to St. Patrick's gave me the opportunity to carry on that tradition of spending an hour with God. And if you haven't had time to do that, I really encourage you to go. There's something magical that happens. For me, I go twice a month, and I'll probably be looking to increase that, I think, that soon, because those 2 weeks that I don't go, I miss being with Him. I kind of prefer the 3 o'clock in the morning hour, as amazing as that is to a person who's not a morning person. You have privacy. There's no one there. It's just you and Him. And if He moves you to sing, so be it. If He moves you to read, it's just a wonderful, wonderful blessing in my life that I greatly appreciate. And I thank you also, Father, for bringing it here once a month, a little closer to home, a little easier for those that have busy schedules, especially thinking of the families in the crowd. We all have excuses not to pray. I think that's been the biggest difference for me in the last 15 years, is taking my prayer beyond singing on Sunday and practice on Wednesday. Mary always reminds us, watch those words and they have meaning, and we sing so much better when we remember they have meaning, much like remembering that wafer isn't just a wafer when we receive it on Sunday. I guess to close, I'm probably way over time, I want to end with this song because it means a great deal to me. I can remember where I left off. In our end is our beginning, in our time infinity. In our doubt there is believing. Great idea. I'll start over just to ruin the mood there entirely. In our end is our beginning, in our time infinity. In our doubt there is believing, in our life eternity. In our death a resurrection, at the last of victory. unrevealed until its season, something God alone can see. There's a song in every silence, seeking word and melody. There's a dawn in every darkness, bringing hope to you and me. Thank you again for this opportunity.